تعالى عنهما قال أخذ رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بمنكبيه فقال كن في الدنيا كأنك غريب أو عابر سبيل. وكان أبو عمرو رضي الله تعالى عنهما يقول إذا أمسيت فلا تنتظر الصباح وإذا أصبحت فلا تنتظر المساء وخذ من صحتك لمرضك ومن حياتك لموتك. رواه البخاري. So this is a hadith that was narrated by Ibn Umar, may Allah be pleased with him. And he said that the Prophet ﷺ grabbed him by his shoulders and he said, be in this world as if you were a stranger or a traveler. And it was said that he would also say, when he would narrate this hadith, Ibn Umar would also say that if you were to go to sleep at night, don't expect to wake up in the morning. And if you wake up in the morning, then don't expect to live until you go to sleep at night. And take from your health something for your when you're ill, and take from your life something for when you pass away, when you're dead. This is narrated by Imam al-Bukhari. It's a very beautiful hadith. I think we've probably heard it before quoted. And so we'll try to just get into some of the lessons that we can learn from this hadith, inshallah. So just kind of like in context of the 40 hadith. So a lot of people kind of like, there's like some conversation about like why is this hadith being mentioned now? And so this is kind of closing off. This is towards the end of the 40 hadith collection. The 40 hadith are kind of principles that if we live by them, then it could really transform our lives. Like these are kind of the principles of Islam. This is what Islam is trying to teach us, distilled into just 40 hadith. And so what this hadith is kind of reminding us is that, one, not to procrastinate. After we've learned all these lessons, we've gone through 39 hadith before this. So now that we've had these 39 hadith lessons before, this hadith is coming and reminding us not to procrastinate, and at the same time not to be distracted by the distractions of this life after learning these beautiful lessons. And it's a beautiful also reminder that the shaitan's goal is actually to distract us. And so this hadith is really trying to get us to focus and realize how serious this issue really is. The Prophet ﷺ would actually call almost anything that would distract someone a shaitan. There's actually a hadith where he mentions that he saw a man chasing a bird, and he said this is a shaitan chasing a shaitan, because this is a man who used to distract people from Islam, and he was distracted by this bird. So he was a shaitan chasing a shaitan, kind of showing you that the shaitan can be used as something that distracts you from your purpose. And so this hadith kind of starts off with Ibn Umar narrating the Prophet ﷺ grabbed him by the shoulder, which is first of all just so interesting that he narrates how it happened. It was so meaningful that the Prophet ﷺ grabbed him by his shoulder that it stuck with him, and he narrates this, and we still narrate it in that way to this day. And this just kind of goes to show that the style of the Prophet ﷺ when he would teach, there's so many different hadith that mention just the intimacy of the Prophet ﷺ in his one-on-one interactions with people. How, for example, we know that Jibreel, when he would come to teach Prophet ﷺ, he came and he put his hands on Prophet ﷺ's thighs, or the Prophet ﷺ put his hands on his thighs. So it was like a very close interaction. Their knees were touching. Ibn Abbas has a narration that Prophet ﷺ took him by the hand. Ibn Mas'ud says that he also one time took him by the hand to teach him a lesson. And so it's just kind of like these different sahabis narrating different situations that the Prophet ﷺ would come and just grab them, grab their hand, grab their shoulder, and just kind of connect with them. And that's something we can take away too, is that when you want to teach someone a lesson, it's very important to connect to them, to know them, to have a rapport with them, to be close to them, to be friendly with them, open, not just like very harsh or just like sitting in front of a classroom, just like talking at people, like I'm doing right now. And then also, the other thing is that the main focus of this hadith, the hadith itself, the matan is very short. It's just be in this world as a stranger or as a traveler. And even what's incredible about this example is that everybody can relate to it. Everybody at some point in their life travels somewhere, even if it's a short distance or long distance. It doesn't matter if you go to the other side of the world or if you just go down to Southern California or wherever it is. Everybody experiences traveling at some point in their life. And even if traveling has become a lot easier in our time, it's not the same hardship as, say, taking like a 2 months journey to go somewhere very far. We can get anywhere in the world now within a day or two. Even if traveling has become a lot easier, we still kind of experience some of the metaphors that come with traveling. So for example, if you imagine someone who is going for a vacation, and they're going to Turkey, let's say, for vacation, and they get to the airport, and they see there's a beautiful lounge, and they're on Turkish Airlines lounge, like a fancy thing, and they give them some free complimentary drinks, and they give them food, and they give them like a place to chill and free Wi-Fi. imagine that person gets so taken with all this amenities that they're just like, this is the best place. I'm just going to stay here, forget Turkey, I'm not going to Turkey, I'm not going to go back home, I'm just going to stay here, live my life here. Everybody would say that this person's insane, their family would go looking for them, the cops would come, they'd take them probably like a mental asylum and see like, is everything okay with you? It's because it's crazy to think that someone would, on the journey, get stuck and say that this is what I want with life. And it's the same thing with the akhirah. It's like this life, in terms of our entire journey, is actually very, very short. The scholars mentioned that there's 4 main stages of our like overall lives. We start off in alam al-arwah, like the place of the souls. Then we go into this dunya, this world. We end up at the barzakh, which is really like a transition zone, essentially like the life in the grave, what we experience in the grave. And then there's the akhirah, which is the hereafter. It's the never-ending abode that we experience at the very end. And so if you think about it, only God knows how long these things are. But let's say like alam al-arwah, like the place of the souls, that's minimum tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. This life is no more than 100 years, maybe 120 if you're a world record breaker. Then there's like barzakh, which is the grave, and only Allah knows how long we'll be there, maybe hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of years, but it's a long time, longer than most people's lives, anyone's life. And then there's akhirah, which never ends. So in terms of this incredible amount of time that our souls will live, our life in this world is this incredibly short blip. It's literally a blink of the eye. It's just like, however many years that we have in this world is so incredibly short. And so it's even more like ridiculous than the example of someone getting stuck at the airport. And another thing that we also learn is that travelers, when they can, they try to travel light, especially when they're on a short journey. So if someone's just going for a weekend trip somewhere, they're not going to take 10 full suitcases and just to go to like San Francisco, for example. They're going to travel light whenever they can. And so the same thing is like in this world's a very short traverse, so there's no need to really get ourselves bogged down with just owning things in this world. And the other things also, just like any traveler, the most important thing is that for a traveler is to ensure the safest, the quickest path, and make sure that they're always in the right direction. Now we kind of just go on a plane and like we're on autopilot. But if you imagine if you need to go anywhere, even if you want to go to the grocery store, even if you want to go to a friend's house like a few cities away, you need your GPS. Like you pop out your GPS right away, you make sure that you're finding the right location. Every few minutes you look at it, make sure you're on the right streets. In the same way in this world, we need a map. Everybody who ever travels needs a map, needs a guide, needs some direction to go to. And for us, that the real guide is the Quran and the example of the Prophet Allah describes it as hudan lil-muttaqin. It's a guidance for the believers. And so as soon as we stray away from that map, so the degree that we stray away is the degree that we get lost in this world. And so the answer is there. It's just how willing are we to look at the map. And another thing is also just to like remember the temporariness or like the imminent destruction. Like this world is like very temporary. If we invest a lot in it, then whatever we get attached in this world, we have to be confident that we're going to leave it. So there's no reason to get attached to it. And so the Prophet ﷺ actually would also remind his Sahaba not to get too comfortable in this life, not to get too ingrained in the luxury. He actually warns his Sahaba, like he said that إِيَّاكَ وَالتَّنَعُمْ. He like warned his Sahaba, like I fear for you, or like beware of luxury. And he said, فَإِنَّ عِبَادَ اللَّهِ لَيْسَ مِنَ الْمُتَّنَعِمِينَ. He said that indeed the true servants of Allah are not from those people who are luxurious or indulge in luxury. So that's like a kind of just like a warning for us that people who indulge in luxury will eventually they'll get further and further away from the remembrance of Allah. And the last lesson is also that the nature of traveling is difficulty. Even if you just sit on a plane and you don't do anything for a few hours, even then it's still difficult. Like you have to sit down for so many hours, and you have to wait in lines, and it's painful, and you arrive very tired to your destination, and so there's always difficulty inherent in traveling. In the same way, the world inherently, there's difficulties that we're going to encounter in this world. And so some signs that we have of being too attached to this world, and kind of like a side note here, is that there's some level of healthy attachment to this world. No one's saying that you need to be a complete, just like cut yourself off from the world and go live in a cave. In fact, Islam is against that. Prophet has many hadith speaking out against this extreme. So Islam is not advocating an extreme. It's trying to tell you to be balanced. Don't be so attached to this dunya that you get lost, and don't be so just irresponsible of what's going on around you. that you're not doing action to help create change in the world. So there's still like a level of attachment we need to have, take care of our kids, take care of our finances, take care of our homes, our education, we have to learn, help our communities. These are all healthy things. But there's signs of kind of being too attached to the world, and things that we can all work on. These are things, it's a hard conversation to have because these are all things like I have I like have a lot of these traits. These are things that we're all kind of working through together, but they're just good reminders to kind of go over together. What are different ways that we know that we're attached to the dunya? So one way is, for example, that we care more about what people think around us than what Allah thinks of us. So when we do an action and we're more worried about, what are they going to think if I do this action, rather than thinking, is this something that's going to please Allah, or is this something that's going to make Allah not so happy with me? Another sign is that we only really care about the accumulation of wealth in this world, rather than accumulating deeds or knowledge or something else for the hereafter that we're going to take with us. We're more than happy spending 8 to 10 hours a day working, going to school, studying all night long. But then when it comes to just spending like half hour of reading something, just a half hour of dhikr, just like 10 minutes of doing some sort of ibadah, it becomes very difficult all of a sudden. So that's like a very prominent sign that we see. And the other thing is that if a day or more passes without even thinking of Allah, without really that thought of Allah coming across your mind, someone who's really attached to Allah or really attached to the hereafter, it's just like a mother for her child. Like as soon as a child moves out of the home, the mom wants to call the child every single day, make sure that they're doing okay. That's all that's on their mind. Are they doing all right? Are they in danger? That's what's on the mother's mind. And in the same way, like someone who becomes more and more attached to Allah, then there's not going to be a day that they don't think about Allah. Another sign is that the minor tribulations that people, the minor tribulations that we kind of face in just our social interactions become a bigger burden on us than the tribulations that Allah might put on us in the future. And so we're more worried about are we going to get this promotion? Are we going to get this house that people expect us to get? If we're starting to worry more about those kind of like little tribulations rather than worrying about the hereafter, that's also another sign. Procrastinating in our salah, like leaving the salah to the end of time, or just like missing it sometimes and not really caring that we missed it, or being able to do hajj and just saying like, I'll do it like eventually, like another year. These are all kind of like signs also that like you're more attached to this dunya. And the idea here is that death is going to come as a surprise. So if you keep procrastinating, eventually you're going to miss it. Like death is going to catch you. Another sign is like wasting time and things that have no benefit. If we're cognizant how short life is, then we're not going to be so willing to waste our time. But if we are heedless of it, then we're going to be more willing to waste time and just do things that are not beneficial. And the last thing is just being obsessed with luxury in the dunya. Of course, it's not saying like you can't have any luxury, but just really trying to be cognizant of where it lies. If the luxury is in your heart, that's something that makes you really happy. That's where your happiness comes from. That's where identity comes from. Is from the things that you own. That's a really dangerous sign. Whereas someone could have a lot of money and it's something that they hold in their hand and not in their heart. And that's not what this is talking about. It's not saying you can't have money, you can't have wealth. But what it's saying is like, where is it located? Someone could be very poor and could be really attached to objects and material wealth, even if they don't have it. And that's like a terrible sign. And someone could be very wealthy and have a lot of things, but it's not where their heart is. So it's really about the attitude that this comes with. And so what are things that we can do? Like when we get attached, it's really like an intoxication. It's an addiction. So it's something we want to avoid, and that when we recognize we have the addiction within us, we have to treat, we have to admit that we have it. And Prophet ﷺ mentions there should be take advantage of 5 things before 5 things, and that is your youth, your health, your wealth, your free time, and your life. And these are all things, like all domains that we can improve on, inshallah. And this is the last thing here is, so what do we do to try to detach a little bit from this dunya when we feel like we're getting too attached? And so the most important thing is sitting with people who are cognizant of the hereafter, people who remind us of Allah. Their company is one of the most important things that we can have. Visit, the hospital, visit people who are sick, visit the graves, go to janazas when someone passes away, visit the janazah. These are all things that reminds us how temporary life is, or how weak we are, how temporary the health and our youth and all these things are. The other thing is obviously dhikr of Allah, remembering Allah constantly, limiting our exposure, our consumption, the time that we spend in watching or looking at things that are like luxurious or in food or